One, Amitofo. It's good to be back. My name is Heng Shi. It is Friday, May the 23rd here in Berkeley, California. It is the 24th and Saturday in the Gold Coast of Australia. And I'd like to welcome everybody to our ongoing series of lectures on the life of Master Xuyun, Master Empty Cloud. 欢迎各位来参加. Glad you're here. I will say that we have a Chinese translation available. 各位知道吗？如果你们愿意听一种流利的普通话的翻译，那个软件的控制板右下角看到那里有个地球，就说 interpretation 就 Chinese 就好了。And also thank you to the Vietnamese translation team that faithfully translates my English words into Vietnamese. If you would like to listen to the Vietnamese translation, there is a box there on the, let's see here. Here we go. You can click on that link. And also, if you would like to request Dharma, then there is an email that you can click on, send an email to our fearless, tireless coordinator, and she will happily set you up. Let's see here. Let me click on that just for fun here, and let's see what pops up. Yes, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much. Okay, we are about to get ready here. I'm going to bring up the Dharma request one more time. Here we are. There it is. Okay, today Elaine is happily going to be our Dharma requester, so I will ring this bell 3 times and make 3 half bows, and then Elaine will go ahead and request Dharma. So here we go. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Okay, Elaine, if you would like to request Dharma, please go ahead and do it now.
风清大的森听，为此法会集一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐。度真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly will lie non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye olahadi samyao samputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi samyao samputosye.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Alrighty, Elaine, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I would be happy to go ahead and be the lens that these teachings come through. Important to keep that lens clean, polished, so I don't distort the Dharma. And we want to say that the Chochechno Ohlone people practice spiritual connections to the earth and to all creation here on their ancestral land for tens of thousands of years. Today we acknowledge them as traditional custodians and original storytellers of these lands, and we offer our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. 我们就说，我们恭敬地承认，Chochechno Ohlone人是我们寺院所在地的传统叙事者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬。并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民也致敬。Okay, here we go. Bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000界内，佛法扬万亿国中。共训其法界和平，利益报贪而后得。And with that concludes our protocols for beginning our lectures. And there is a bird that figures in tonight's story. Oh my goodness, do we have stories for you tonight? From here on out, because Master Empty Cloud is, he has come to, they say he's an 8th stage bodhisattva. So 8th stage bodhisattvas are extraordinary beings who have tremendous strength in the Dharma. And they come to help us wake up. And so the things that happen especially because he is awake at this point, some of the things that happen are truly beyond the realm of ordinary folks. Extraordinary things are happening in his life, and today is no exception. So let's get into the story. He is now, let's see, first of all, I'd like to say, so glad that our varsity team has showed up. I was traveling for a couple weeks, and even though my body was here, I hadn't really arrived. So now I've recovered, and I'm back, and I'm glad to be here looking at the folks who have gathered to listen to the Dharma tonight. Oh my goodness. So many dear friends. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Excellent. And I might mention, I will be in person here in Berkeley tomorrow night for the Avatamsaka. Sudana is, he's been, just as a preview, Sudana has been traveling for 12 years between his teachers, between the last one and the new one. And boy, he's had nobody to whom he directed his questions, and he's been digesting and cogitating and turning over and dreaming about and practicing the lessons that he learned from his previous teacher. And he's now really ready to get his questions answered. And wow, he just machine guns out a whole list of questions for his new good and wise advisor. So that's what we're going to hear tomorrow. And we don't get to hear the new teacher, whose name is the Elder Liberation, Jietuo Zhangzhe. He doesn't speak yet, because Sudana is the emotion, have to say it, the emotion in this young man is just palpable. You can really feel it as he is hungry now to get answers to the questions that he hasn't been able to ask for the last 12 years. So this is the Entering the Dharma Realm chapter, Ru Fa Jie Pin, is truly a human document. So inspiring. Okay, that's coming up tomorrow, 7:30, same time as tonight's lecture, so we'll see you all there, I hope. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Okay, here we are. For the storytellers among us, you know who you are. Here is a remarkable account. It is 1903, so the third year into the 20th century. He is 64 years old, and he is going through Yunnan and Sichuan in that area. Here we go. 后不斗，独七树，不伤虫，不语不食，念佛立化，公明月，好斗成性，此鸡雄，上官把雨斜流红，知味风介狂心歇，素食孤栖不害虫，两目瞻仰黄金像，念佛窝窝何从容，旋绕三扑俨然化，众生与佛将无同。Okay. After that, the rooster no longer fought, but perched alone in a tree. It did not harm insects, and if no one gave it food, it did not eat. One day it died standing up while reciting the Buddha's name. The master then wrote the following verse. Fond of fighting was the disposition of this dauntless rooster. It injured chickens, pulled out their feathers, and made their red blood flow. But once taught to fear retribution, it followed the precepts. Thereupon, its mad mind stopped. It became a vegetarian, roosted alone, and no longer injured insects. Its eyes gazed upwards to contemplate the golden images. The rooster crowed while reciting the Buddha's name with ease. After circling round and bowing 3 full bows, it peacefully passed away. What difference do you find between living beings and the Buddhas? All right, what is going on here? It seems to me as if there is something missing, honestly. So we finished 127. He was at Fuxing Monastery, and he went into seclusion at Jizushan. That was the pilgrimage. And he encountered difficulty there. He got a cold shoulder from the local Sanghans who were corrupt, who had a hereditary system going on where monasteries got passed on inside of families instead of based on virtue, which is the way the Buddha set it up. So he had to move on, and he went to Fuxing. Master Empty Cloud was so disturbed by the decline of the Dharma that he cried, it says. This is last week. And then, if you recall, when we got, here's a picture of him in seclusion, coming out of seclusion. And last week, the verse went like this. You remember last week it was 癸卯公年64影响放生有 let's see 有凶机 there we are 性急好斗伤同类公交念佛受三归 So this is in 1903, the master was 64, and a dauntless rooster was liberated at Yingxiang Temple. The bird was impulsive, fond of fighting, it injured fellow chickens. The master taught the bird to be mindful of the Buddha and gave it the 3 refuges. So this is one rare case where the verse doesn't actually match the text. It seems like there's in the text, there's so much content that this incident with a rooster didn't get included. So Shifu went ahead and told that story in the verse. So if we start with the verse here, then we connect with tonight's lesson, which is the rooster taking refuge, mindful of the Buddha, goes off to rebirth. Here we are. Take a look at the photo. It's a chicken. There's a chook, as they say in Australia. Here is a monk smiling. Here's Master Empty Cloud giving the refuges to a chicken. And the lay people are... are they thinking of chicken drumsticks and chicken noodle soup? I don't know. Probably a few of them. If they're Buddhists, they're not. Okay, so this is the beginning of tonight's text. Starts really abruptly. It's as if it's halfway through the story. It's because the verse last week gives us the clue. There was a rooster that had been liberated that loved to fight. And it was aggressive and nasty and just really pulled feathers out of the other chickens, etc. He met Master Empty Cloud and took refuge, totally changed. So as a result, he stopped fighting, he slept in a tree by himself, didn't chase bugs, which is extremely different for a chicken, and refused to eat if it didn't get fed by hand. And then it died while reciting the Buddha's name. So everybody assumed that this bird was there. Who's in that bird's body? We don't know. Maybe a bodhisattva who was there to teach chickens and humans. So here's the verse. Let's see what it says. 雄鸡念佛上王生，无人岂可不精勤？念字在字不间断，一心不乱，物无生。Even the dauntless rooster recited Buddha and then went off to rebirth. So how can we people afford not to be diligent? Being ever mindful, always reciting without cease, single-minded, without confusion, you awake to non-production, to no further becoming. Okay, got that? Now, what do we do to patch this together? Well, luckily, we have Master Empty Cloud's Nianpu. Here it is. Let's see here. Here we go. We're ahead of ourselves. Here it is. Right, there we go. He says, I was in seclusion, and a monk from Yangxiang Monastery came, Cheng Siyo. He said that the monastery had done a liberating life. Now, this liberating life ceremony is controversial, and it's a ceremony that Buddhists love to perform because it involves taking animals that were bound for slaughter, either here in California. Birds can be raised to be targets for sport shooting, skeet shooting. In Petaluma, for some reason, Petaluma up in Sonoma County is one of the capitals of poultry that includes chickens, pheasants, turkeys, geese, all kinds of birds that are destined for slaughter, one way or the other, are raised and sold in Petaluma. So if you are an erstwhile Buddhist who wants to liberate life, you go up and negotiate with the bird farmer and buy back these birds that are on the way to die in grisly ways, either in the stew pot or on a sportsman's shotgun shell, and you can liberate them, let them free. Now, the problem is, and why is it controversial? It should be fine, right? Well, you have to release the animals in a way that is humane, that doesn't harm them. Because if you let them go in an urban area, of course, there are rules against that, they're likely to be run over by cars or eaten by cats. So it's not feng sheng, it's feng si. You liberate to death instead of liberating life. So it's an issue. Also, if you liberate the wrong species in a natural area, you can disrupt the order of the animals. For example, here's an example. Here in Berkeley, we tried to liberate turtles up in Tilden Park. There's a jewel lake up there, and it looked like the perfect lake to liberate turtles. And so people had turtles that had been given to them as pets, and they found that the turtles got too big. And what people often do when they're given turtles is they flush them down the toilet, thinking that's a safe way to get rid of them, which of course the turtles can't survive. So we wanted to liberate turtles in Jewel Lake, and somebody said, oh, we better call the East Bay Regional Park District, talk to the rangers, what they say. And we said, we would like to liberate turtles in Jewel Lake. What kind of turtles do you have? And we said, well, turtles. He said, absolutely not. Turns out that most of the turtles that are sold in pet stores for pets for children are what are called Mexican red ear turtles. They start out just the size of a tablespoon, and they would kind of fit inside a teacup. And they get very large, and they are super, super aggressive. They will eat other turtles. They will eat fish. They chase everything out of wherever they arrive. And if you release one or two in a native pond in California, in a year, all you have are Mexican red ear turtles. All of the brown water turtles, all of the native soft-shell turtles and all that are not as aggressive just get moved out of the neighborhood. They get defeated and devoured by the aggressive turtles. So the ranger said to us, if you have red ear, look at the turtle. Does it have a red ear? Nope. Absolutely, you may not. If you let that go, we will fine you and have you catch it back. So we learned that you have to be very careful as you liberate life. So it makes sense, right? So as a result, feng sheng in liberating life, this ceremony in urban Northern California, you got to be pretty careful. Now, if you have at City of 10,000 Buddhas, we have our own ponds. One of the places we liberate life is called the Walnut Ranch, and there are lakes it's out in Lake County, and we can liberate animals there safely because they're not going to go anywhere. They're on our own property. So you have to be very careful where you set those animals down so that they can thrive and so they don't harm the other species. Now, in China at the time, somebody had a chicken. 该是城市有放生，凶鸡从书尽. They liberated a rooster that was heavy, big, large rooster. 吉凶恶好斗. This rooster was aggressive, nasty, and liked to fight. 春鸡皆被伤亡呀. So all the other chickens were harmed by it, and he scratched out their feathers. 我记为说归界. So I explained for this rooster the precepts and the refuges. 而教令念佛. And I said, you should recite the Buddha's name. Before long, 不复斗, he'd stopped fighting. 独居树上, he sat alone on the tree branches. 不伤虫, didn't harm insects. 不欲不食, wouldn't eat if you didn't feed it intentionally. 九之温中生，即随中上殿. It wasn't long before the bird would listen to the bells and then would follow the assembly into the worship, into the ceremony hall, into the Buddha hall. 可比乃其树上. At the end of the ceremonies, he would fly back onto the tree branch. 教义念佛, I taught it to recite the Buddha's name. 即作佛佛佛声音, and the chicken went, bark, 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 Buddha, 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 Buddha. How's that? Buddha, 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 Buddha. Pretty good. That's how chickens would respond. Buddha, Buddha, right? Bark, 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 bark. And after 2 years of this, 一日晚课毕, one day after evening ceremony, 站居举手, stood up on the branch and raised its head, 张翅二扇作念佛状, and put its two wings, flapped its wings 3 times, 立化, and standing up, went off to rebirth. 树而不变. The bird didn't decay after numerous days. 抗议丧志, 一位之名也. So they did a formal for us a funeral ceremony to put it in a box and buried it. And so this is the story. How about that? How about that? So what do you say, right? 好斗称性. So this is my verse, and that's what we heard from in Shifu. Shifu prepared or preserved the verse. What do you say? Pretty amazing, right? That's read 中金树金. Okay, good. Yeah. So, okay. Now, some people say, oh, come on, right? Well, you know what? Check this. Our Dharma brother Ernie wrote an article for Vajrabodhisi, Jinggang Puti Hai Zazhi. This is stories of the Venerable Master and the pigeons. Good. He says, here's Master Hua, look at the birds. 2 pigeons, 1, 2. Shifu's got food in his hand, and he's feeding the birds right there. So, Ernie says, I have a pigeon story for you. This is the first Shui Lu Kong at CTDB 86. Let's see. Barbara, Ernie's wife, Guobi and Guoshu, were taking pictures with the old-fashioned video cameras. Ernie was a gopher. He would go and get things. He was gophering for things. Let's see. So Ernie says, I showed you pictures of the abbots from China, young monks, old monks. Everyone's very tired. Okay, here we go. Just a few feet beyond the steps of the dining hall, our translator, I'm sorry for the translator. Here, there's the translator one, everybody. 我名字叫 Ernie. 讲一个鸽子的故事. Okay, we'll get to the Chinese in a minute. Okay. They did a liberating life. There were many boxes of pigeons. There weren't many people, a small knot of people, Master there. All the dignitaries and the people had left or were milling and talking down by the steps. A small knot of people were there, 5 or 6 boxes of pigeons. 要放生有5、6个5、6盒鸽子. My job at the moment when the ceremony reached the right point was to run up and open the boxes of pigeons really fast. Okay. Let's see. 因为就在离大斋堂台阶几步远的地方，靠近大橡树那里，正要举行放生仪式，有好几箱的鸽子。参加的人并不多，只有一小群人。当然，师傅在哪里？我因为要帮忙，所以也在哪里。另外还有几个人，我记得有黄国娟，他是上人在香港的弟子，也是大护法。所以所有的贵宾及参加法会的人，有的离开了，有的离开了，有的还留在斋堂前的台阶上聊天。只有大约15或者是20个人，和几箱的鸽子在哪里准备放生。我的工作就是等放生进行到某个阶段，我要收的指示，然后要紧的跑上前的把鸽子笼子打开了。So I'm reading the just to make because I'm mindful of the pain of the translators having to translate this. So I'm reading the Chinese. We get the full force of the story. So let's see here. I was proud of this, but I'd afraid I'd do something wrong, says Ernie, very humble guy. At the right moment, I ran up and ripped open the boxes, and all the birds took off, maybe 60 of them, straight up into the air, into the west. Once they got way up in the air, 1/3 of the birds peeled off and dove straight back and tried to land on the master, maybe 20 birds. Down came the birds. They were all over the master. They were on his head, his feet, his forearms, his shoulders. Too many birds, and they'd fall off. If they fell to the ground, they'd get right back on top of him. A few of the birds landed on other people standing close by, and as soon as they did, they leapt off and tried to fly over to the master. As many birds figured out there wasn't enough room, they flew away. The whole thing occupied 3 or 4 minutes, a very short event. 对于这份工作，我感到很得意了，但是也担心会出错了，错见一到了，就是我冲上去，迅速地把这个笼子门的打开，所有的鸽子都飞了起来，就大约有60只鸽子，全部从向西方飞去。然而，它们就飞回来，就let's see，它们飞上高空。大约有1/3鸽子的又掉回头，朝着我这边飞回来。大约有20只鸽子，全部都想停在师傅的身上。他把降落在师傅身上，有的停在他的头、他的脚、他的胳膊，就各个地方几乎通身上下，因为鸽子数目太多了。有的甚至于掉下来了，掉到地上的鸽子都马上又飞来，就狮子山上就到师傅的身上，有几只鸽子的落在师傅的身边的人、旁边的人身上，才刚一落下就马上跳起来，试图再回到师傅的身上。有的鸽子眼见师傅身上没地方停，索性的只好飞走。整个过程大约有3-4分钟，不是很长的时间。So if I ask you, why did those birds come back and try to land on the master, I'm sure you'd have a very clear answer in your mind. It might be a little different if we ask one another. It's all very clear in your mind. One thing in one of the pictures that Dharma Master Sure showed from a different occasion, the master was holding a couple of pigeons. I recognize in that picture, which I'd never seen before, the same countenance that I'd seen the day when the pigeons all landed on him. It was really indescribable. He had what I could only describe as a look of genuine concern for the birds as beings, as living beings. If pigeons land on most of us, we'd say, "Oh, what a cute bird, how nice," or "Get off." He was totally focused on a concern for their being. At least that's how I interpret it. I really couldn't say more. I remember something I always thought the master said when I got thinking about it. Maybe it's somebody who said what he said. I'll leave it to you to judge. He said, animals will get close to living beings, close as they can. The only thing that stops them from coming to us is fear. Maybe the best answer to give for the way the pigeons behaved. At least on that one level, they had no fear whatsoever of that one human being. So this is 我就说 他说为什么？Okay, let's see here. He said, those pigeons before had been locked up in boxes, maybe going to be slaughtered in Chinatown. They were locked up in boxes and brought here by a truck and then released and had the chance to fly away, but a third of them turned around and came right back. He says, this has stayed with me over those years. Why did the pigeons do that? Why didn't they land on me? I was the one who let them go. Why didn't they land on Hector Wang? Pigeons are not supposed to be very smart. He says, I know why those birds came to land on the master. He said, it's because Shifu was absolutely was interested in them as beings. 就说那些鸽子为什么飞回来到师傅的身上呢？本来他们放在笼子里边呢，从唐人街买回来，本来要做人家的晚餐呢什么的，很残忍。不过一放了，他们就1/3就不飞走，就回来师傅的身上。Ernie 果碧他就说果旭他说，因为师傅他们都感觉到这个人一点都不怕他们，而且呢对他们的安全，对他们的这个幸福非常担心。不看他们是鸽子，就知道他们是众生他们都看得出，所以呢飞到他的身上应该是这个，这是他的理论。So hold on here. The story that I want to share here with this photo is a similar story, which is in Gold Mountain Monastery. What Ernie is describing is 1987. This story happened in Gold Mountain just a year before I arrived, which was Master Hua arranged a liberating life ceremony. Some disciples wanted to do it, and so he agreed. And they liberated, again, pigeons. And they took them up to the roof of Gold Mountain and let them go. And all of the pigeons flew away except two. Two of the birds refused to fly away. And some disciples noticed this, and came back to tell Shifu, there's still two birds are still up there. They went up the next day, the birds are still there. Shifu opened the door and said, let them come in if they choose. The birds followed the disciples inside and down to the Buddha hall and made themselves at home in the Buddha hall. And now, some people will find this hard to believe. They followed the Sangha around the Buddha when it was time to nianfo, to recite the Buddha's name after ceremony. And so, unusual behavior, right? So, Shifu noticed this, came down the next day, and had corn in his hand, and dried bread and things. And he put the dried corn in his sleeves of his robe, and the birds would go into his sleeve after the corn, and Shifu would close the bird into his sleeve. Now, the robe he's wearing here is not. This is in his ceremony robe, which had those long Chinese Buddhist sleeves, the Chinese robe sleeves. And the birds would be inside. Shifu would close the armhole and speak Dharma for the birds inside his sleeves. And then he would feed them more, and he would teach them about greed. He had a jar with corn in it, and the birds would go into the jar, and they couldn't get out. And Shifu would speak Dharma for them there, and then liberate them again. So he had the best time paying a lot of attention to these birds. Now, that's an amazing story. But the story, the punchline of the story is one of these unforgettable moments. And Shifu, one day, the birds were still there. And the disciple, I forget who it was, said, Shifu, tell me, what is it with these birds? Why did these two not fly away? And Shifu was silent for a minute, and he said, well, he said, do you know, these are my former left home disciples who didn't follow the rules. They broke their precepts and they fell into the bodies of animals. He said, I didn't know if I should tell you that, whether it was you could understand that or not, or whether you could bear to hear it, all of you new left home people. He said, don't assume the precepts are a game. He said, this is serious business. When you make a commitment to follow the rules, you have to really follow the rules. You can become a Buddha and you can also fall, he said. So everyone was gulp. Oh my goodness. So that's the story. So the Venerable Master and the pigeons. So you think about Master Empty Cloud giving the refuge to the chicken, to the rooster, and sure enough, extraordinary bird. Who is it in that bird's body, after all? All right. Are we ready? This is 1904, 65 years old, half of his life, first half of his life. 波于安一数时，一句时. Okay, ready? Removing a huge rock at Boyu Temple. Ready? Here we go. 恭备各坛乐，恳请出关讲经，法宴变颠境，礼提都福行。福星，刘公住崇圣寺。公曰：吾愿在稽山，开挂丹结众，遂令边川半里，觅得博于安，流丹结众而猛右有巨石，高9寸4，那就是9尺4寸，宽7寸6，就是7尺6寸。主白虎不祥，道伽蓝，率僧已去。All right, here we go. Here we go. Here's the English. Entreated by various protectors of the Dharma to end his seclusion and lecture on sutras, the master took part in many Dharma assemblies around Yunnan province. After that, General Li Fuxing requested the master stay at Chongsheng's monastery. The master replied, I'd made a vow to set up a monk's retreat on Chickenfoot Mountain to receive traveling monks. The general thereupon ordered the local official at Binshan County to conduct a search. He said, go to Boyu Temple to see if it's suitable to accommodate visiting sanghas. To the right of the temple was a large rock, measuring 9 feet 4 inches tall and 7 feet 6 inches wide. Since it was ruled by the white tiger, which is a term used for feng shui or geomancy, the right or to the west of the building, it was inauspicious. The master prayed to the Sangharama guarding spirits and led a group of bhikshus in moving the rock away. Here's the picture. Look at these monks working very hard, pushing this giant rock. So, the verse says, 昭公百余时难移，攻其护法助神力，怪石班家众称义，圣德感格太妙奇. Over 100 workers were hired, but they couldn't budge the rock. The master prayed to the Dharma protecting spirits to lend their power. When this particular rock was moved away, everyone said, how strange. His abundant virtue evoked a response. Miraculous indeed. So, key to this story making sense is the practice of feng shui, right? Which is it reached the West and became something like astrology, I suppose, something that people misunderstand and want, seems like power. So feng shui, it's an opportunity for people to be deceived by would-be feng shui masters. In fact, geomancy is a genuine study, and Master Empty Cloud was a master at it. He rebuilt temples, and every temple had its story. Many of these temples were hundreds and hundreds of years old, and so they came and went over the centuries. They would burn down, they would be abandoned, and then rebuilt. And often the reasons, if the temple was not a success or came to a bad end, it was because the feng shui was off. He would restore them and correct the feng shui. This is one of those stories. Here we go. In the spring, all the Dharma requesters ask, let's see, 归华寺和尚齐民 all of the lay people ask him to come out of seclusion. Dao Si Jiang, they want, so he explained the Yuanjue Jing, the Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment, the sutra in 42 sections. 3,000 people took refuge and became disciples. Autumn came. 孟佛上人请道觉住世. So he went to Jeju Si and explained the Shurangama Sutra. So if only we had recordings of those lectures, but we don't. They disappeared or weren't made in the first place. Maybe they didn't have recording equipment back then, probably not. And no, indeed they did not. So you wish there'd been someone who had recorded what he said. 记在盖寺感冷眼睛到寒山寺，寒山师ban sun si. So he traveled around, explained the Shurangama Sutra, Qing Chuanjie. He got a request to transmit precepts. Fa Shi, after that was over, Dali Ti Ji Du Zhangjun, Man Songlin. And this General Li came, Men Fuxing, Shuai Zhong Guanshen. Let's see, Yang Dao Dali Fu. So he went to Dali Fu Zhu Santa Chong Sheng Si. He stayed at a place called Venerating the Sages and explained the Lotus Sutra. So we've got the Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment, 42 sections, the Shurangama, and the Master Han Shan's poetry, and the Dharma Flower Sutra. Gui Yi, several thousand people took refuge. So he was requested to stay at this place called Venerating Sages Monastery, and I said, I will not stay in the city any longer. I want to I want to create a place where traveling Sangha members can stay on their pilgrimage routes, because he was turned away when he needed a place like that. The hereditary nepotism system doesn't allow monks to stay. So if you all could find a place, a suitable piece of land, I want to create a monastery to provide shelter for monks, he says. I really would like to go to Mahakashyapa's monastery, to Jizu Chickenfoot Mountain. This is my vow, he says. Zhong Chengshan, everyone said, good vow, we approve. Nai Ling Bin Quan Si Zhi Sun Ban Li Yu Shanzhong Ni De Yi Po Yuan. They found a broken down monastery. Ming Boyu An is a convent, so it was a nun's place in the past. Bol Bo Yu is the monk's alms bowl. 举之随住无方式. You could say there, but there's no accommodations. 残无, there's no means of getting food there either. 让释放四种来了，接理接旨. So how do the trends? Let's see. Everybody praised the idea. They instructed the magistrate to handle the matter. A ruined cloister. Yeah, there we go. I lived there, but there was no buildings, no food. So all of the Sangha members who came were received with respect and courtesy. Hold on here. 伯与岸自清家后而无人住. Nobody lived here after Jiaqing, after the Jiaqing reign period. 因大门外时有一具是白虎不相. There was a very large rock to the right of the main door, which is, here's the two characters, the white tiger. The white tiger is the west, and the rock being there is not appropriate according to the rules of geomancy or feng shui. 你在此地整一放生池. And there was a plan to have it be a liberating life pond instead. 故宫整池不脆. 继续上继续土在之无根. Let's see. So the rock was there, and they couldn't. It was really stubborn. The rock wouldn't yield to their attempts to move it, and I looked, and there was no. It wasn't connected to rock down below. There was no deeper rock underneath it. 石膏, this is how big it was. 丁滂家辅佐. I sat in full lotus on the top of the rock, and then I called 20. Let's see here. 一座. I said it's got to be moved 28 zhang. That's a certain measure to the right. 来人工. 100 workers came. 并立3天. They pushed it for 3 days. 无法动. Couldn't move it at all. 不顾而去. They left. They quit. We can't move it. 师父, 100 of them. 我抽之切兰. I prayed to the bodhisattva who looks after monasteries, Qielan Pusa, the bodhisattva who is at Guanggong in common parlance. And I recited the Buddha's mantras, Shuai Shiyu Sangren. We got 10 monks together, 一直走, pushed it to the left. 互动观, 众观. The 敬畏神助. All of the assembly who saw this happen said, wow, the spirits are at work here. You've got some magical, invisible spirits helping you do this. 好事者体位. So after this, they called it the cloud-moved rock, the rock that got moved by clouds. 图大夫听永之. There were many 士大夫提永生多. Many verses were written about this in praise. And I, too, wrote a verse. Here we go. I'm going to save the verse for next week because this is a remarkable. Didn't I tell you? This is after Master Empty Cloud's awakening in the Chan session at Gaomin Monastery. Things became more and more miraculous. And the only way you can explain these things happening is to say, this is an unusual man. His virtue can do things that strength cannot do. So the power of virtue is stronger than rock, stronger than angry roosters, bloodletting aggressive birds. So fierce animals, immovable rock, and probably the scariest thing of all is misbehaving human beings, people who take the Buddha Dharma and turn it into their own personal property by passing on monasteries from father to son and preventing honest, well-meaning monks from staying in the Buddha's own monasteries. That's something that he So you can pitch yourself against animals, pitch yourself against rocks. Those can shift. Humans, with their misbehavior, God, that's hard. But he's out to do that. He's going to change the atmosphere of the Sangha for the way it's done in nature. I'm sorry, in China, in Sichuan. This is why we remember Master Empty Cloud. He was a reformer of the Dharma. He changed people's minds. How difficult was that? Okay, coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend, what have we got? Take a look here. Growing from Our Roots, 30 years after Venerable Master Hua's entering Nirvana, May 31st, last day of May, June 1st, first day of June. On Saturday, there will be programs all day at City of 10,000 Buddhas, how Master Hua's vows have grown over the decades, a tour of the city, presentation stories, Q&A. Shifu, we talk about those 4 legacies, the 4 places where he returned over and over again as things he wanted to create and do. How have those 4 legacies grown over the past 30 years? So looking forward, Sunday is the standard, the ceremony for a commemoration of the Nirvana, looking backwards, as we have done every year for 30 years. So if you'd like to register, we would like you to register. Can you shoot a picture of this QR code here, or go to drba.org, and they will help you register there. I don't know how much of it will be online for those of you who are interested in listening in from far. I hope we'll know more about that later. So this is not tomorrow. This is the next weekend happening. All right? All right. Let's see here. We've got there we go. Yes. You can go out to register there. drba.org. Let's see. Chunyu has put it in the chat box. If you'd like to click on the link in the chat box, you can find your way to drba.org. Okay. Shall we dedicate merit? Let's do that. Please make a wish. Thank you all for joining. Glad you were here. We will be back next week and continue. Here we go. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. People hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity. May our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. And before we leave, we can bow to the Buddha. Let me set the banjo down. Alrighty. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. That's going to do it for us for this week. We'll see you all next week or tomorrow night. Amitofo. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining in.